Hi, I want to teach you two new words in Hebrew so I can talk to you about a spiritual principle which we call the law of perspective, or which we call Shekel and Shemesh. Those are the two words. Shekel in Hebrew is what is our little coin, and Shemesh is the word for the sun in the sky. So what I want to do is compare Shekel and Shemesh. Shekel is our coin and Shemesh is our star, our earth star. Now, actually this isn't a shekel, this is a 2 shekel piece, which is even a funnier another word. The word for two in Hebrew is shnayim, so 2 shekels would be, they put it together and call it a shnekel. So this is a shnekel piece instead of a shekel. But anyway, the idea is this. If you take a little shekel piece and put it up to your eye, it becomes the same size as the shemesh. A little coin becomes the same size as the sun. Well, how can that be the same? This is one of the smallest things there is, and the sun is so big. What's the difference? The difference is perspective. Because when something is close to you, it looks big. And when something is far away, it looks small. And this is what Yeshua taught spiritually and morally and relationally when he said this in Matthew chapter 7. He said, why do you always try to take the speck out of somebody else's eye, something small, and you're not taking the beam out of your own eye, which is something big? I was wondering if that was a Jewish thing. We Jews always try to correct somebody else, but I suppose it's a universal human principle. But anyway, he's saying, when you do something right, let's examine this. When you do something right, you do something good, you think it's huge. It was the best thing anybody else in the world ever did. When somebody else does something good, you think, okay, it was good, but not that good. And just the opposite is true. When you do something wrong, you think to yourself, okay, it was wrong. No big deal, just a little technical foul. When somebody else does something wrong, it was like the original sin. And so we learn to adjust the way we think according to our perspective. We always want to make things look better in our own eyes and how we see about ourselves. Now that rule, the law of perspective, or the shekel and the shemesh, affects so many parts of life. Let's just think about it for a minute. For one thing, it has to do with humility. Because if I think what I do is always so big and important, then I'm going to have pride. Particularly if I think what everybody else does is something small, then I'm going to have a danger of falling into pride. So learning this simple rule of perspective keeps me humble, keeps me from falling into a problem of pride with that. Now it also helps me with integrity. Because if I always see what I do, if I blow it out of proportion to something big, then I'm not seeing reality. And it helps me also with purity of heart. Because if every time I do something wrong, I can just fake it out of the way as if it didn't make any difference, then I'll continue to do something wrong. And then it could get me in a bad heart that I'll always start blaming other people. Ooh, see how many bad things you could get into. I'm condemning, I'm prideful, I'm skipping over my own sin, I'm not really checking the truth, because you don't realize what everything you think and what everything you see, it's actually coming through a perspective. And some people say, well, I don't have that perspective. Well, if you think that, you've already missed it, because Jesus is saying this is a universal principle. The way to get it right is to understand that there is perspective. Not to say you don't have a problem, but to say that's a universal rule of nature, and then adjust how you see things to get the perspective right. Anytime we try to cooperate with someone, and what good does it do to cooperate if somebody has the exact same talents you have? You want to cooperate with someone's a little different. And so you want to be able to appreciate their qualities at the same size. You have to adjust how you're thinking about yourself and raise up the other person so that you can cooperate with them. Or even just communication, just to understand what the other person means. He's speaking at something that looks big to him and you're thinking it looks small. You're talking about something that looks big to you and it looks small to him. And of course, when we're talking about unity, we're all for unity, aren't we? Well, here's what you have to do to get unity. You have to take what you think is so important about yourself and shrink it down, and take what you look at someone else and enlarge it, and that's how you get to unity. If you're not willing to do that, you'll never get to unity. Well, how about marriage? Here's a good one. I got news for you. God made us so that men and women always see things differently. My wife and I get along great. We don't see anything the same way. I'm totally telescope mentality. My wife is totally microscope. My wife sees every single detail. I don't even see it. She says, look at that. I said, I'm looking at it. I don't see it. And I'm seeing only telescope. I'm looking, she says, what difference does that make? And for the marriage to work, you've got to just say, hey, I don't see what you're seeing, but I trust that you're looking through that microscope and you see things I don't see, and you trust that I'm looking through a telescope and I'm seeing things you don't see, and your marriage isn't going to work out if you don't learn this simple Shekel and Shemesh principle. Now, one last thing here, I'm also thinking about a principle of leadership. As you go on in the Lord raises you up and you have more and more responsibility, more and more leadership. And what does that mean? You have to relate to more and more people. So you're not just talking about one other person that's got a difference of perspective. You're talking to relate to maybe 2 people or 3 or 5 or 10 or 100 or maybe 1,000 different people that have different perspectives. And to be able to be a good leader, you've got to be able to imagine what other people are seeing. You've got to be able to shrink your perspective down and be able to imagine yourself looking through the eye of all those different people, not just one other person's eye. And then you can see all their different perspectives, and then that helps you become a leader. In fact, you can basically become a leader only to the extent of how many other people's perspectives you can see, which demands that exercise of pushing your perspective down and lifting somebody's perspective up. Well, I hope that helps you. It's got in every different area of life, it can really help you in many other things. But let's learn this law of perspective. What I do good always looks big to me, and what I do wrong always looks small to me. What I do looks important to me and unimportant what other people say. When we learn this rule, the law of perspective, it'll help us get along a lot better with all the things that Lord wants us to do.